Picture the servants' attic of a great house, the bare-raftered top floor where the maids slept to a bed under the water tanks, the hottest room in summer, the coldest in winter, the cheapest and most despised space in the whole building. Now lift that attic 20 stories into the sky, wrap it in limestone, lay marble where the rough boards were, hang a French painting where the mop hooks used to be, plant box hedges in lead tubs along the parapet, and charge more for it every month than a schoolteacher earns in 2 years. Add a wine cellar hidden behind a false wall, stocked in a desperate hurry during the last legal weeks of 1919. Add 6 telephones, a Rolls-Royce idling at the curb with a man in whipcord standing beside it, and a rope of pearls kept in a wall safe behind a hinged mirror, insured for $60,000 and clasped every evening around one throat by a girl who's paid $60 a month to do it. That's Park Avenue in 1927, the newest rich street in the richest city on earth, and almost none of it is 10 years old. A place where a man could lose somebody else's fortune before lunch and dance at the Central Park Casino by midnight. A place where the guests drank federal crimes out of crystal coupes while a man from police headquarters reached for the tray. A place where the higher you lived, the higher you stood, and the very top floor, the floor that used to belong to the servants and the water tanks, had somehow become the most expensive real estate in America. We're going back there tonight. Not as guests. Guests never see anything. We're going in through the service door on the side street, up the back elevator with the felt pads on the walls, into the pantries and linen closets and cellar stairs where the real life of the filthy rich actually ran. One household, one girl, 2 years more or less, through the parties and the seasons and the mad climbing stock market, all the way to a certain Thursday in October 1929, and then past it down the far side into the quiet. One honest word first, because this channel keeps its books clean. The street is real, the buildings are real, every law, date, price and headline you're about to hear is documented. But the girl whose hands you're about to wear is borrowed, a composite, stitched together from the memoirs and agency records and household account books of 100 maids whose names never made the society pages because their entire profession was making sure they didn't. The rooms are history, the eyes are on loan, and wherever the record ends and the reconstruction begins, I'll tell you which is which. So, I make these history stories and I still have no earthly idea whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who want to know exactly how many bottles of champagne a respectable family could hide behind a false cellar wall on Park Avenue. 1100 since you ask. Either way, subscribe if you feel like it. Get comfortable. Here we go. 6 o'clock in the morning, 20 floors above Park Avenue, and your hands are already working. You're kneeling on the cold flagstones of the South Terrace with a rag in one fist and a tin of polish open at your knee, rubbing paste into the brass latch of the terrace door. The smell reaches you before anything else has properly woken up. Ammonia and rotten stone sharp enough to cut the morning cold, sitting at the back of your throat like a struck match. Under it, fainter, the smell of the city itself rising at you from below, coal smoke, river fog, and from somewhere down in the grey streets baking bread. Even the air up here arrives from underneath. Everything on this terrace arrives from underneath. That is the first thing you learned about the top of the world. It is fed entirely from the bottom. The latch sticks. It has stuck since the day you arrived. A hard quarter-second catch just before it gives, and no amount of polish will cure it. But polishing it is your job, so you polish it. Your fingers are red to the second knuckle. The cold comes up through the flagstones, through your knees, through 2 layers of cotton stocking, and settles into the bone. Your breath hangs in front of your face, drifts over the parapet, over the box hedges standing stiff in their lead tubs, and dissolves into 400 feet of empty air. Below you, far below you, the city is waking. You can hear the milk wagons first, iron tires and unhurried hooves, working the side streets while the avenue is still empty. A tugboat moans somewhere out on the East River, long and low, and another one answers it. A train passes directly under the avenue itself. You can't hear it from up here, but you know it's there, sliding beneath the flower beds down the centre of the street, because everything on Park Avenue, the whole polished lid of it, is built over the buried tracks of the New York Central. And at 7 sharp the riveting will start, the pneumatic guns hammering steel on the new buildings going up all over Midtown, a sound like giant sewing machines, because more towers are rising in Manhattan this year than anyone has ever managed to count. Welcome to Park Avenue. Autumn 1927. Your name is Nora Cleary. You're 19 years old, and you came here 5 months ago from Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Anthracite country, a town that runs on coal the way this street runs on money, with 1 cardboard suitcase, your mother's rosewood sewing box, and $11 folded into your shoe. Your father went down in the mines until the mines were done with him. Your mother takes in sewing. Everyone back home said New York would swallow a girl like you in a week. They weren't wrong about the swallowing. They were only wrong about how far up you'd land. You work in a duplex penthouse at the top of a new limestone building near 71st Street. 20 rooms on 2 floors, plus the terrace wrapping 3 sides of it, plus the servants' wing behind the kitchen where you sleep. You're what the employment agency called a useful maid. Parlour maid by morning, ladies' maid by evening, seamstress whenever anything tears. $60 a month, your room and your board, every other Sunday off and a half-day Thursday. 14 hours on your feet on a party day. You do the arithmetic sometimes, kneeling on cold flagstones. $2 a day, near enough. The flowers alone on a Friday cost more than you do. And here is the joke of it. The joke nobody up here finds funny, because nobody up here has thought about it even once. 15 years ago, the top floor of a New York apartment building was where the owners put the servants, the laundry lines, and the water tanks. The word penthouse meant a lean-to on a roof, a shed, a place for machinery. Then, a few years after the war, somebody looked at all that attic space, the light, the quiet, the distance from the street, and understood quite suddenly that distance from the street was the one thing the rich could not buy anywhere else in Manhattan. By 1925, a magazine publisher was throwing parties in a duplex penthouse at 1040 Park Avenue that got written up like coronations, and the attic floor of every new building on the avenue was being drawn up for millionaires instead of maids. The penthouse used to be the attic. Hold on to that. It's the whole story of this street, and it is very nearly the whole story I'm going to tell you tonight. You give the latch one last pass, cap the polished tin, and stand, knees cracking, aprons. You wear the print one in the morning, the black in the afternoon, and the difference matters more than you'd believe, settling back into place. Through the glass of the terrace door you can see down the length of the gallery inside. Waxed parquet, a long refectory table that came out of somebody's Italian monastery, silver bowls waiting for the florist's boy. All of it dim, all of it silent, all of it yours until 7 o'clock, in the particular way that a museum belongs to its night watchman. 20 floors up, 6 o'clock. the whole gleaming machine of the household still asleep behind the glass, and you on the wrong side of it, with polish on your hands. You could stand there another minute watching the light come up over the East River, grey to pewter to the first weak gold. You don't. Mrs. Halloran wants the range blacked and the fires laid before the trays go up. And if you are not down the back stairs in 90 seconds, you'll hear about it in that voice she saves for girls who dawdle. You go in through the door you polished. The latch catches a quarter second the way it always does. The way it will on the last morning you ever open it, though you don't know that yet. And that's the only time tonight I'll tell you what you don't yet know. Come on, down the back stairs. The rich are about to wake up, and before they do, you're going to learn how they really lived. The back stairs are bare concrete, painted battleship grey, and they smell of scouring soap all the way down. 2 flights inside the duplex itself, because even the servants' stairs in this apartment are grander than the front stairs of any house in Pottsville. And then you're in the kitchen wing, and the day hits you all at once. Heat, steam, the cast iron breath of the range, and Mrs. Halloran standing over it like an engineer at a boiler. Mrs. Halloran is the cook. She is 50-some years old, built like a keg, from County Cork by way of 30 years of other people's kitchens, and her forearms are a map of old burn scars, pale, slick lines from wrist to elbow, one for every grand dinner this city has eaten off her work. Those forearms can lift a copper stock pot you'd need both hands and a prayer for. She looks up at you exactly long enough to establish that you're 90 seconds later than she wanted you. The range won't black itself, love. That's all. From Mrs. Halloran, that's a speech. You take the blacking and the brushes and you kneel at the second range. There are 2, one coal, one of the new gas ones, because Mrs. Halloran trusts gas the way she trusts bankers. And you work the paste into the iron in small hard circles while the kitchen assembles itself around you. Katie Rafferty comes in yawning with her cap crooked, carrying the silver basket. Katie is the other maid, 22, from Inwood at the top of the island, and she has been in service since she was 16, and she shares the room next to yours in the servants' wing, and within a week of your arrival she had taught you the 3 great survival laws of this household. Never be caught sitting down, never be caught eating, never be caught at all. A good maid, Katie says, is a roomer. The family should suspect the work gets done by weather. You eat your own breakfast standing up at the zinc counter, bread and tea, 6:45, in the pause between the range and the trays, standing, always. There are chairs in the servants' hall and there will be time to sit in them at 11 o'clock tonight. Your feet know the schedule better than you do. They have already begun their slow all-day ache, a tide that comes in and never quite goes out, and you are 19. Mrs. Halloran's ankles, after 30 years of this, are a subject nobody raises. At 7, Mr. Pruitt comes down the corridor, and the kitchen straightens itself without anyone quite moving. Mr. Pruitt is the butler. He is 61 years old, English, narrow as a closed umbrella, and he has served this family for 34 years, which means he served them in the old house, the real house, the one on 5th Avenue that doesn't exist anymore. We'll get to the old house. Everything in this story comes back to the old house. He wears a black coat that was brushed before you woke and will be brushed again before lunch, and across his waistcoat runs a thin steel chain, and on that chain live the keys. I want you to look at the keys, because one of them matters. Pantry key, plate safe key, cellar book key, wine ledger key, and then the long one, the old-fashioned one, iron, worn bright along its shoulder from handling. That one opens a door off the bookroom downstairs, a door faced with the same walnut panelling as the wall around it. so that when it is shut you would swear the wall was solid. Behind it, in racks that go back into the dark, lie 1,100 bottles. Claret and Burgundy and port and brandy, and, in a cold corner of their own, the champagne. Every bottle of it bought and paid for and carried in before midnight on the 16th of January 1920. Because at midnight on the 16th of January 1920, the Volstead Act came down on this country like a lid, and from that hour it was a federal crime to make, sell, or transport a drink in the United States of America. Not, mind you, to own one. To drink one in your own home, from your own cellar, laid down in time, that the law in its wisdom left alone. So in the last weeks of 1919, the rich of this city bought liquor the way other people buy coal for a hard winter, in tons, in truckloads, with the lights on all night in the auction rooms, and what they bought that December is what Mr. Pruitt's iron key has guarded ever since. 1,100 bottles when the door first shut. Rather fewer now, and who counts them, bottle by bottle, in a leather ledger with a marbled edge? Mr. Pruitt. And who will be standing at that door on a grey morning 2 years from tonight, counting them out instead of in? Well, hold on to the key. Good morning, Nora. Mr. Pruitt says your name the way he says everything, as though it were an item on an inventory he is satisfied to find present. He looks at the range, at the blacking, at your hands. The tray's at 8. Madame rang down for her post early. And mind the seam at your shoulder was just a conscience, it's opening again. He notices everything. It is not kindness and it is not cruelty. It is the profession. 34 years of noticing everything and never once being noticed, unless something goes wrong. You are paid to be invisible. He has been invisible so long and so well that he has made a kind of rank of it. There is one more thing that came out of the old house with Mr. Pruitt, and you may as well see it now, because it matters late in this story and I don't want you to miss it when it does. In his pantry, on its own shelf, wrapped in a green baize cloth, lives a ledger the size of a paving stone, the dinner book. Every dinner the family has given since 1894 is written in it. The date, the guests, the menu, the wines. In 3 generations of Butler's copper plate, the ink going from black to brown as the pages go back. Senators are in that book. 2 presidents are in that book before they were presidents. Mr. Pruitt enters each dinner the night it happens in his small upright hand and blots it, and wraps the baize back around it, and to watch him do it is to understand that as far as Mr. Pruitt is concerned, the family's whole claim on eternity lives on that shelf next to the silver polish. At 8 o'clock the trays go up. This is the first ceremony of the rich person's day, and I need you to understand something about it. The rich, in 1927, do not come down to breakfast. Breakfast comes up to them, 1 lacquered tray at a time, and each tray is a small argument about status settled before 9 in the morning. Mr. Croft's tray is plain to the point of violence. Black coffee, dry toast, and the morning papers folded so that the financial page is uppermost, always the financial page, with the closing prices from yesterday laid out in columns of tiny type like the results of a war. Mrs. Croft's tray is a still life. The flowered china, the single rose from yesterday's arrangement, the grapefruit sectioned so that no fibre resists the spoon, her letters stacked with the invitations on top and the bills underneath, where they can be ignored in comfort. You carry Mrs. Croft's tray. You knock, you wait for the voice, you cross the carpet, and the carpet in this bedroom is so deep that carrying a loaded tray across it is genuinely dangerous, like wading a stream with your arms full, and you set it on the bed table, and you draw the curtains back on 400 feet of morning air, and Mrs. Croft says what she says every morning. "What is the day doing, Nora?" "Clear, madam. Wind off the river." She never looks. That's the point of view. You are the day's first mirror, and a mirror is not looked at, only into. Eleanor Croft is 44 years old, and she is beautiful the way this street is beautiful. Recently, expensively, and with a kind of vigilance underneath it. She sits up in bed in a shell pink lasseuse with her post and her grapefruit, while you run her bath and lay out the morning's first costume, and here we arrive at your actual profession, the one the agency meant when it said lady's maid. Because Mrs. Croft will dress 4 times today: morning, luncheon, afternoon, dinner. And every one of those 4 costumes is a sentence in a language the whole street speaks fluently, and you are the one who keeps the grammar. The morning frock is Jersey, French, deceptively plain. Deceptive because the plainness is the expense. The luncheon dress is crêpe de chine. The afternoon is a knitted suit from a Para house that a woman on this avenue would recognize across a room the way your father could recognize anthracite from Culm at 40 feet. And for evening, tonight is quiet, only the Merricks dining. A slip of black satin that weighs less than your apron and costs $265 at the dressmaker's copy price. You know the figure because you were sent to pay the bill. $265, 4.5 months of your wages. You carried it home in a box lighter than a loaf of bread, and you held it on your lap on the Madison Avenue streetcar like a sleeping child. And then there are the pearls. They live in the wall, safe behind the hinged mirror in Mrs. Croft's dressing room, in a case lined with chamois, and they come out in the evening. A single rope, 87 pearls, matched over 11 years by a jeweller on Fifth Avenue, graduated so subtly that the eye reads them as identical. When Mrs. Croft is dressed, you stand behind her and clasp them at the nape of her neck, and your fingers are scrubbed but still smelling faintly of brass polish if you bring them close to your face, are for 3 seconds each evening in contact with an object insured for $60,000. You did the arithmetic the first week. You couldn't help it. You're a Coal Town girl. You price things. It's a reflex like flinching. $60,000 at $60 a month is 1,000 months. 1,000 months is 83 years and 4 months. If you had started in service the year the family began giving the dinners in Mr. Pruitt's book, 1894, and worked every single month since without spending a nickel, you would just now, in the autumn of 1927, be able to buy the thing you fasten around this woman's neck while she reads her invitations. That's the arithmetic. I'm not going to keep pointing at it. I'm just going to let it stand there all night at the edge of every room the way you do. Thank you, Nora. Mrs. Croft touches the rope once. Centre of the collarbone, a pilot checking an instrument. In the mirror, her eyes meet yours for a moment, which is rare. And she almost says something else, which is rarer. Then the moment closes like water. The Merricks at 8. Tell Pruitt the good claret, not the best. Best is for people one needs. And there, in 11 words, is more of how the rich really lived than in any newsreel you'll ever see. The good, not the best. Best is for people one needs. You go down the back stairs to tell Mr. Pruitt, and the iron key comes off the chain, and the walnut wall opens, and the cellar breathes its cellar breath into the book room. Cork and dust and cold stone, the smell of 1919 still shut up in the dark, and somewhere below you the whole city is pretending, at the top of its voice, that a smell like that no longer exists in America. Now, the old house. Because you cannot understand this apartment or this street or this family until you understand what they gave up to be here, and why giving it up was the smartest thing they ever did. The Crofts had a mansion. Everyone like the Crofts had a mansion. Fifth Avenue in the old century was a parade of them. Marble and brownstone and Indiana limestone, 40 rooms, 60 rooms, ballrooms with ceilings painted in Italy and shipped across an ocean in crates. Mr. Croft's grandmother built theirs in 1893 at 5th and 68th, and Katie has heard Mr. Pruitt describe it maybe twice in 5 years, always in the same words. A house with its own weather. Coal came into it by the ton and servants by the dozen. 16 of them, Mr. Pruitt says, 16 indoor staff for one family, laundresses and footmen, and a man whose entire position was silver. And in 1925, they sold it. Sold the ground under it, really, because that's what the money wanted. And the wreckers came, and the marble staircase went out through the window on a crane, and an apartment building stands there now. 12 stories of limestone with families stacked inside it like fine china in a barrel. If that sounds like a defeat, you're reading it backwards, and so did you. Your first month here. It was the fashion. It was practically a stampede. All up and down Fifth Avenue in these years, the great piles are coming down. The Astor Mansion itself, the double palace at 65th Street where the Mrs. Astor once decided who existed in New York society and who didn't, went under the wreckers' bars in 1926, and they're raising a temple on the site. The families aren't fleeing to the suburbs, they're moving sideways, 1 block east, into the sky. Because a mansion, by 1925, had become a machine no one could afford to run. Not in money exactly, in people. The 16 servants of 1893 simply do not exist anymore. The girls who would have carried coal up those stairs are working the counters at the 5 and 10, and the switchboards of the telephone company for better wages and a latchkey, and their evenings free. So the mansion's work moved into the building's walls, steam heat instead of coal fires, electric refrigeration instead of the Iceman, a building laundry, a building switchboard, elevator men on shifts around the clock. The Crofts run this whole 20-room penthouse on 5 indoor staff and Farrell the chauffeur, 6 people doing, with the building's machinery behind them, what 16 did in grandmother's day. Grandmother's marble pile for a 20-room apartment. It sounds like coming down in the world. It was in fact the most expensive address in the history of the family. And Mr. Pruitt, who carried the dinner book out of the old house in his own arms the day the wreckers came, has never once called this place home. He calls it upstairs. He came with the family the way the dinner book came, and the pearls and the 1,100 bottles moved uptown in a padded van, the portable parts of a dynasty. And the building they moved into, I need you to understand the building, because the building is a character in this story, maybe the main one. Park Avenue itself is a trick. The name comes from the strips of planted park running down the centre of the street, and the strips of park are a lid. Beneath them, 4 tracks of the New York Central Railroad run in a covered cut the whole length of the avenue, the same tracks that used to run open to the sky, in smoke and cinders, when this street was called 4th Avenue and no one who could afford otherwise would live within 3 blocks of it. Then, in January 1902, in the fog and steam inside the Park Avenue tunnel, 1 train ran into the back of another and 15 people died. And out of that wreck came a law. No more steam locomotives on Manhattan Island. the railroad electrified, sank its yards, decked them over, and finished the new Grand Central Terminal in 1913. And on top of the deck, on air rights over the buried trains, the richest street in America grew like grass on a grave. That's already a thing in 1927, and hardly anyone walking the avenue thinks of it. The flower beds are a roof. 10 times an hour, 100 tons of steel slides beneath the tulips, and in the buildings on either side the water trembles in the vases, and nobody looks up from their soup. So when I tell you the rich of this street live suspended, over trains, over servants, over the whole grinding mechanism that holds them up, I am not reaching for a poetry. It is the literal engineering of the place. You learn the building from the bottom, because the bottom is yours. The front doors, the marble lobby, the front elevators with their walnut panelling, not yours. Your geography is the service entrance on the side street, down 3 steps, past the timekeeper's window, the back elevator with the felt pads and the smell of other people's dinners, the basement corridors where the building's own staff live their shifts, porters, handymen, the switchboard girls, the doormen changing collars. 60-odd men and women work inside this one building around the clock so that some 90 tenants may live weightlessly. The tenants know perhaps 6 of them by name. The one you know best is Louis. Louis Meyer runs the back elevator on days. He's 46, out of Yorkville, built square, with hands like a dock worker and the disposition of a parish priest who has heard everything. Louis has been hauling this car up and down its shaft since the building opened, and an elevator man, you've learned, occupies a position in the world somewhere between a ferryman and a confessor. Everything the building is rises and falls through his car. The florist's boxes and the fired cooks, the bootlegger's crates and the doctor's bags at 4 a.m. Louis knows which apartments are happy the way a stoker knows which boilers are sound, by sound alone. Morning, Duchess. That's his name for you. He has one for everybody. The gate rattles shut, the car sinks, your stomach lifts. 20 floors, Louis says, most mornings to no one in particular. You know what's up there when the wind gets serious? Nothing. Sky. People pay fortunes to live where sensible pigeons won't. At 9:30, Mrs. Halloran hands you the market basket and the list, and you go out into the city on the household's business. And this, 5 mornings a week, is your hour of daylight, your ration of world. Down the side street, and the moment you turn onto the avenue, the trains announce themselves. A long, swaying rumble under the pavement, up through your shoe soles. Gone. Doormen stand under the awnings the whole polished length of the street, still as figures on a clock. Governesses pilot English prams. A dowager's town car waits at the curb with its motor running for 40 minutes, burning gasoline against the possibility that Madam may wish to go somewhere, and the chauffeur reads the racing page behind glass. You cut west to Lexington for the fishman and the greengrocer. Park Avenue itself has almost no shops. The street is too grand to sell anything, and the city changes in 1 block from limestone to brick, from silence to push carts, from doormen to delivery boys, and you can breathe again. You were here 5 weeks when you saw what this city does when it decides to make a noise. The 13th of June, 1927, you'd hardly unpacked, the day New York gave Lindbergh his parade, after the boy flew the Atlantic alone in May. Mrs. Halloran marched the whole staff to a stationer's window on Lexington to watch, and what you remember is not the man, whom you never saw, but the paper. Ticker tape and torn telephone books snowing off the buildings downtown, so much of it that the papers said the street sweepers hauled away close to 2,000 tons. A blizzard, in June, made of stock quotations. You didn't know it then, but you had seen the decade's whole fortune in one image and missed it. This city so drunk on its own rising line that it tore up the figures and threw them out the window for joy. The fishman's boy asks after The Castle in the Clouds, and slips an extra half-pound of scallops into the parcel because Mrs. Halloran once cured his mother's chilblains with a receipt from Cork. The greengrocer's wife wants to know if it's true the Crofts have a tree growing on the roof. It is. There is a crab-apple in a tub up there, and a man comes 4 times a year to prune it, and he is paid more for the visit than you earn in a week. You have stopped telling people that part. They think you're inventing. On the way back, you stop at the garage on 66th Street because Mrs. Croft wants the car at noon, and this is where you find Farrell, Dan Farrell, the chauffeur, 34, Hell's Kitchen Irish, splendid in whipcord breeches and leather gaiters, with the rolls up on ramps and his sleeves rolled and the smell of gasoline and metal polish hanging around him like weather. Farrell is the only one of you whose work the family actually sees, which has made him glossy and a little loud, and the closest thing the household has to a rich man of its own. And Farrell has a notebook. You see it now, as he wipes his hands and checks the noon order. A little black pasteboard notebook, sweat curved, living in his left breast pocket, behind the cigarettes. He doesn't show you what's in it. He pats it. Men pat that pocket all over this city in 1927, the way other centuries patted relics. Radio, Farrell says, as if answering a question you didn't ask. You want to be in radio, Nora. I'm telling you now so you'll remember I told you. You don't know what that means yet. You will. Put a pin in the little black notebook, and the pat, and the shine on Farrell like new paint. The noon car is wanted at 12 sharp. Mrs. Croft is lunching at the Margery. You have 11 pounds of the ocean in a basket on your arm, and 19 flights of the world between you and the kitchen. Up you go. The felt-padded car, Lewis's steady hand on the lever, the floors ticking past like years. Everything they've got, Louis says quietly, watching the shaft wall slide, comes up this shaft. Coal, cream, champagne company. You ever notice that, Duchess? There's no way to be that high that doesn't run through here. Remember that too. It's the truest sentence anyone will say to you all year. Thursday is your half day, and your half day has a liturgy of its own, and I'll give it to you once so you'll know where you go when you vanish from this story for an afternoon. You walk. Walking is free. Down Lexington and across on 42nd Street to the Bowery Savings Bank, the new one by Grand Central, a banking hall built like a basilica, all bronze doors and mosaic and 60 feet of coffered ceiling over the humblest money in New York. Marble for millionaires downtown, marble for maids here. You stand in line with laundresses and elevator men and subway motormen, and you pass $9 through the grill, and the teller stamps your passbook, a small grey book, your name in someone else's beautiful handwriting, and you watch the total climb the page 1 line a week. It stood at $211 this morning. It is the only object you own that is gaining weight. You keep it at the bottom of your mother's sewing box under the spools, wrapped in a stocking with a hole past mending. Remember where it lives. It matters later. And now it's Friday, because on this street Friday means a party, and a party means that at 10:30 in the morning Benny comes up the back elevator. Benny is the bootlegger. I'd tell you his last name, but nobody in the building has ever heard it, which is the point of Benny. He is a neat, unhurried man of maybe 40 in a grey suit, a shade too good for the cardboard he carries. and he arrives every week or so with carton-stenciled seltzer. Melrose Beverage Company, and Louis runs him up the shaft with a face as blank as the elevator wall, and Mr. Pruitt receives him in the service hall the way one receives the piano tuner, an established tradesman in a settled line of work. Understand the mechanics, because the mechanics are the era. The cellar behind the walnut wall, the 1919 cellar, the legal cellar, is capital. It is drawn down slowly, decanted for people one needs, gloated over, guarded by the iron key. But a Friday party for 60 drinks like a fire drinks air, and no cellar in New York could stand it. So the running supply, the working liquor, comes from Benny. Champagne off the boats at Rum Row, gin that has at least met juniper, Scotch whisky that came down through Canada, and has the paperwork to prove it never existed. The house standard, Mr. Pruitt calls it. The house standard is what the 60 guests will drink after their second glass, when the palate has retired for the evening. The first glass always is real and French, and 1919, because Mrs. Croft holds that the first glass is the only one anybody remembers. You've watched Mr. Pruitt negotiate with Benny, and it is a finer duel than anything the guest will manage upstairs. This morning it goes like this. Benny quotes champagne at $110 the case. Mr. Pruitt, without looking up from the ledger, 90. It was 95 in June, and June had a heat wave and a hijacking. Benny observes that the Coast Guard has gotten ambitious this autumn, that 2 boats were taken off Montauk last month. That risk is a cost like any other. Mr. Pruitt observes that the house takes 5 cases a month, 12 months a year, pays cash on the barrel head, and has never once had a bottle go missing into a patrolman's overcoat, because this house's arrangements are sound, and that reliability, Mr. Kessler, Benny, says Benny automatically for the 100th time, is also a cost like any other, which he is welcome to go and price elsewhere. They land at 98, which is where both men knew they would land when Benny stepped off the elevator. 5 cases at 98, $490 for one Friday's working champagne. Your passbook, $9 a week, would need a year and a week to hold one Friday. Pleasure as always, Mr. Pruitt. Benny squares his empty hand truck. He has a way of looking around the service hall, mild and total, pricing everything in it without moving his head. The copper, the plate safe, the walnut wall he has certainly deduced. Anything the house ever wants to sell, he says. Every visit like a man leaving a card. The house knows where I am. Nobody has ever answered him. File that away too. Here is what the money buys, since we're counting. The Volstead Act made drink scarce, and scarcity, on this street, is the whole point of everything. Before the war, a gentleman drank his wine at dinner and his brandy after, and a cocktail was something raffish that happened in hotel bars. It took prohibition, it took the law itself, to invent the cocktail hour. That gathering at 6 o'clock in a private apartment, behind a doorman and 20 floors of altitude, where the drinks are mixed strong to cover the gin and cold to cover everything else. And the drinking is itself the entertainment, because every sip is a small conspiracy. The rich did not merely keep drinking in the 20s. They drank more and earlier, and with infinitely more ceremony, because the law had transformed a habit into a privilege. And privilege is the one flavour this street never tires of. You've heard the phrase cocktail hour all your life. It was invented in rooms like this one in these exact years by people hiding in plain sight at the top of the sky. By 6 o'clock the apartment has changed states. You have spent the afternoon on your knees with beeswax, and then on the step-ladder with the good glasses, 4 dozen coops carried 2 at a time from the pantry, each one held to the light and breathed on and buffed. The florist's boy has been up twice. The gallery smells like a greenhouse standing inside a furniture-polished cloud. Mrs. Halloran has built her cold buffet, the aspics, the lobster in its armour, the ham that's took 2 days, and hired-in waitresses from the caterer are being inspected in the service hall by Mr. Pruitt, who walks the line of them like a colonel, straightening a collar with 2 fingers, and in the dressing-room you build Mrs. Croft. That is the only honest verb. 40 minutes. The bath drawn to temperature, the silver dress out of its muslin sleep, the stockings rolled and readied. Her hair, she wears it short now like everyone. The Bob reached Park Avenue 2 years behind Broadway and then conquered it overnight. Set in waves you pin close and pray over. She sits at the glass in her slip and watches herself assemble piece by piece, with the unsmiling attention of a man checking a contract. Powder. The dress, lowered over her raised arms like a bell over a clapper. The grey silk shoes. Then the mirror swings, the safe opens, the chamois case, and you lift the rope of pearls and clasp it. 3 seconds, $60,000, your polish-smelling fingers at the exact warm centre of the richest street on earth, and she touches it once at the collarbone and stands. "How many tonight?" she says to the mirror. "Mr. Pruitt says 62, madam." 62. She looks at herself the way you look at your passbook, reading a total. Then let's go be looked at. You reach the door first and open it and disappear against it, flat as wallpaper as she goes through. She does not see you do this. That is how you know you did it perfectly. A Park Avenue party in the autumn of 1927 is a machine with a polished side and a working side, and you spend the whole night on the working side watching the polished side through pantry doors. The guests come up the front elevators from 8 o'clock. You hear each carload arrive as a swell of voices through the gallery wall, like surf getting organised. Men in white ties and men in the new soft dinner jackets. Women in dresses that end at the knee. At the knee, a thing that would have caused fainting in 1912. With their arms bare to the shoulder and their backs bare to the waist, drenched in scent, bright as spoons. There is a senator's widow. There's a man who owns 19 newspapers in the Middle West. There's a woman who flew an airplane under a bridge for a bet, and a man who is having his portrait painted in Spain. And there is a quiet block of grey-templed men from downtown. Mr. Croft's men, who stand near the terrace doors with their drinks and talk in figures. And there is a man from police headquarters, high enough that his name gets murmured, high enough that his driver wears no uniform. He arrives at 9, kisses Mrs. Croft's hand, and takes a coupe of the 1919 champagne off Katie's tray with the exact gesture of a man accepting a cup of coffee. Nobody laughs. Nobody so much as glances. On the working side of the pantry door, Katie catches your eye and does something microscopic with one eyebrow that says everything this story needs to say about the Volstead Act. The law is downstairs, in the rain, giving parking directions. The law's superiors are in here, drinking the evidence. I want to be precise about this because it's the centre of the era. These people are not breaking the law the way a burglar breaks it, nervously, at night. They're breaking it the way a river breaks a dam that was built badly, continuously, calmly in evening clothes, with the certainty that the dam was somebody's mistake and the water is only doing what water does. In 5 months you have never once heard anyone in these rooms speak of prohibition as a danger. It is a texture, it is a servant problem, and a supplier problem, and above all, a delicious little engine of glamour, the wink that makes the whole night conspiratorial, 62 respectable people, all technically complicit, all bound together by the pleasant crime in their hands. Downtown tonight, federal agents are axing open some barbershop speakeasy for the photographers. Up here, the axes will never come. Everyone in this room knows it. Some of them are the reason. Your post for the first hours is the ladies' cloakroom, which is Mrs. Croft's own guest suite, where you take wraps, chinchilla, ermine, a white fox cape still smelling of the cold street, and lay them on the bed in an order you must remember without labels, because asking a guest her name is not done. The furs on that bed you price out of habit, a year of the building's entire staff sleeping in one heap. The women come in 2s and 3s all night to repair their mouths and their gossip, and they talk in front of you with total freedom, because you are furniture. This is the strangest privilege of your position, and I need you to feel how strange it is. You are 19 and invisible, and therefore you know more about this room than anyone in it. You know which marriage is finished. You know who cried in the bathroom at the Ambersons. You know that the senator's widow's emeralds are paste this season, and everyone pretends otherwise, and that the woman in silver lame has a bootlegger of her own she's a little in love with, and that 2 of the men downtown are carrying a third, whatever that means, and that it frightens his wife. One of the women, younger, new money, nervous, hands you her wrap and says, "Thank you, Mary." Your name is not Mary. Her maid is called Mary. Probably her mother's maid was called Mary. Somewhere along the line the name detached itself from any particular girl and became a species. You say, "Yes, madam," and you take the wrap. There are worse things than being called Mary. But you fold that little moment away in the same pocket where you keep the arithmetic, and the pocket, I'll tell you honestly, does fill. At 11, the music gets louder. A hired trio, piano and violin, and a saxophone, playing the year's songs at a volume calibrated to the neighbours below, and the party reaches the state its hostess has been engineering all night, the roar. A good party roars. You can hear the roar 2 rooms away through a shut door, a single continuous animal sound made of 62 voices, ice, glass, and saxophone. And when it reaches full temperature, Mrs. Croft stops steering it and simply rides, flushed, glittering, briefly and genuinely happy. From the pantry door, changing a tray, you watch her laugh at something the newspaper man says, head back, pearls moving on her throat, and you think, you can't help it. That's what $60,000 is for. Not the pearls. The laugh. The permission to laugh like that 20 floors up in the middle of a federal crime. Absolutely certain that nothing in the world can reach you. And then, at 11:20, the house telephone rings in the pantry, and everything you believe about that certainty gets tested. It's the doorman's voice, tight. 2 men, downstairs, showing federal identification, asking for the penthouse. Mr. Pruitt takes the receiver. You watch his face do absolutely nothing for 3 full seconds, the most frightening nothing you've ever seen, and then the machine moves. No shout, no scramble. He nods to the second waiter, who lifts the 2 open cases of Benny's champagne and walks them, unhurried, into the service hall. Katie's tray of full coupes goes into the flower room among the vases. The cocktail shakers are in the flower bin before you understand you're the one who put them there. Your hands are shaking and working at the same time, which you would not have thought possible. And Mr. Pruitt straightens his coat and goes out to the front hall, and you hear, through the pantry door, the roar in the gallery continue at full volume. 62 people drinking the evidence, and not one of them warned, because warning them would make a scene. and there are no scenes in this apartment. 90 seconds. The elevator opens, and it is the newspaper man's secretary with a portfolio of drawings his employer demanded be sent up tonight, and the federal identification was a press card misread by a rattled hall man. And the whole thing is nothing, was always nothing, will be a funny story by Tuesday. Relief arrives in your body before the news does. Your knees go loose against the pantry counter and you laugh, one syllable, silently into your sleeve. Katie retrieves her tray from among the chrysanthemums. The shakers come out of the flower bin wearing a light dusting like winter. Mr. Pruitt reappears in the pantry, brushes one white thumbprint from a shaker with his handkerchief and says, to the room in general, in a voice with no colour in it at all, "The house does not hurry, the house rearranges." Then he goes back out to the roar. But you saw the 3 seconds of nothing. You know what you know. 20 floors is not as high as everyone upstairs believes. It is exactly 90 seconds high. Past midnight, the grey-templed men colonize the terrace with cigars and their voices come through the cracked pantry window. And this is the first time you really hear it. The sound that will swell under the next 2 years of your life like the trains under the avenue. Figures. Radio is at 101, up from the 80s in the summer. Somebody's pool took General Motors up 9 points in a week. Somebody's cousin put 10,000 on margin in March and drives a Marmon now. The voices are lazy, replete, absolutely without fear. Men discussing an ocean that has decided once and for all to hold still and be a road. One voice, older, drier than the rest, says something about 1907, about panics, about how nothing goes up forever. And the terrace laughs, not unkindly, the way you'd laugh at a man who still carries an umbrella indoors because it rained on him once 20 years ago. You stand at the sink, up to your wrists in champagne glasses, listening to men discuss more money in one sentence than your father earned in his life, while the cold comes off the window glass at your face and your feet ache their long ache. 14th hour. And behind you, Mrs. Halloran covers the ruins of the Lobster and says to nobody, in the voice she uses for prophecy, "Eaten bread is soon forgotten." The last guest goes down at 10 to 3. Her Vionnet, the woman in silver, leaves with somebody else's husband holding the elevator gate, and that is also none of your business, and also goes in the pocket. The trio packs its instruments. The roar is gone. The gallery has the stunned, ringing silence of a struck bell. 62 empty glasses and the smell of dead cigarettes and lilies and spilled gin, and you and Katie move through it, gathering stemware by candlelight habit, though every light still blazes, because glass breaks against glass and broken crystal comes out of your wages. Katie, stacking ashtrays, nods at the terrace doors, at the city beyond them still burning its lights down to the rivers. Louis says the whole island's turned into a roulette wheel. She says it flat, tired, but there's something under it. He won't touch the stocks, not $1. I told him Farrell's made 400 on paper since June, and Louis just looks at me and says, "Paper." She straightens, presses both fists into the small of her back, 19 hours deep. I don't know which of them's the fool, but I know which one I'd marry. First you've heard of marrying. You file it with the rest of the night. The eyebrow, the flower, the 3 seconds of nothing. And at 3:30 you climb the back stairs to your room and unlace your shoes with fingers that smell of gin and silver polish and put $9 worth of Thursday out of your mind and lie down 11 feet from Katie's wall in the narrow bed under the roof of New York. 2 years, near enough, from that party to the morning I'm steering you toward. 100 Fridays. Sleep now. The trays go up at 8. Winter comes to the penthouse from 3 directions at once. Down from the sky, in off the terrace, and up the elevator shaft in the form of furs returning from cold storage. By December, the box hedges wear burlap coats, sewn on by the terrace man like a tailor fitting shrubbery, and the sticking latch on the terrace door gets a skin of frost on its brass every night for you to wipe away every dawn, and the city below you goes grey and short-lit, and the household's evenings move uptown, because this is the winter of Harlem. This is the winter. I can date it for you exactly. After the 4th of December, 1927, when a young band leader out of Washington named Duke Ellington opened at the Cotton Club at Lenox Avenue and 142nd Street, and within a season the radio wires were carrying that band's sound out of Harlem into parlours far beyond it, and going up to hear it in person became the fashionable end of a Park Avenue night, the way the opera had been fashionable in grandmother's day. You go once. It is not a treat. It is a Tuesday. Mrs. Croft's usual party is joined at the last hour by a visiting cousin whose own maid is ill, and 2 women in that party will want tending, wraps, pins, repairs, the small emergency services of the very dressed. So at 11 o'clock at night you are put into the front of the second car beside Farrell in your good coat with a work basket on your knees and driven north. And I want to tell you what you see, and I want to tell it straight, because this is a place where the glamour of the era and the shame of the era sit at the same small table, and this channel doesn't sell one without the other. What you see first is Harlem itself at midnight, more awake than Midtown at noon. Crowds on Lenox in the cold, laughter hanging in clouds, music leaking out of a dozen doors. What you see at the club is a low room got up like a plantation veranda, which is its own sentence, if you let it stand there long enough. The show is the most astonishing thing you have ever watched. Dancers faster than thought, a trumpet doing things a human voice would be arrested for, and that band, wearing the room like a glove, playing what the papers have started calling jungle music, which is what the management calls it too on the signs, because the management knows exactly what its downtown customers came uptown to buy. And here is the fact, plain, the way you'd wipe frost off brass. Every face at the tables is white. Every face on the stage and carrying the trays and taking the coats is black. That is policy. The Cotton Club sits in the middle of the largest black neighbourhood in America and does not, with rare grudging exceptions, seat black customers. Not even, the story goes, and the story is true in its bones, the families of the men on the bandstand. The genius is local. The door is not. You stand at the back wall with the other maids and the drivers, in the coat smell and the draught, holding your work basket. Beside you a woman perhaps 10 years older, in a better coat than yours, maid to the visiting cousin's hostess, watches the floor show with a face you cannot read at all. Her name, you will learn in the cars later, is Miss Ruth. She has an opinion of this room she's not going to spend where it can't buy anything. When the trumpet finishes something impossible, and the tables bay and hammer their little lamps, she says quietly to the space in front of her, they'd cross the street from him at noon. Then she straightens a fold of her employer's wrap over her arm and goes on watching. And you go on standing beside her, 19 years old, learning at midnight on Lenox Avenue that there is more than one kind of service door in this country, and that yours, whatever else is true of it, opens from both sides. Mrs. Croft at her table laughs her terrace laugh. The pearls move. 20 blocks and one closed door between her night and Miss Ruth's, and you in the middle, holding the pins. In January the street empties. This is a thing nobody tells you about the rich until you work for them. They migrate, like birds, on a calendar, altogether. From New Year to Easter, the fashionable end of Manhattan simply decamps. To Palm Beach, mostly. That made-up paradise in Florida where the same 400 people who dine together on Park Avenue in December dine together in patio courtyards in February, sunburn through their pearls. The Crofts go for 6 weeks. It is an expedition on the scale of a small military campaign, and you are the quartermaster of the clothes. 14 trunks, wardrobe trunks that stand on end and open into little closets, tissue between every fold, a written inventory in your sewing box handwriting, day linen, tennis silk, 17 pairs of white shoes, and a separate locked case for the jewellery that travels under Mr. Croft's own eye on the train. They take Farrell and the second car south by road. They take you. They do not take you. Palm Beach maids are hired down there, or borrowed, or done without. Hauling your $60 self 1,000 miles is an extravagance the arithmetic doesn't support. The pearls go to Florida, you stay with the Hedges, and so you discover the secret season of Park Avenue, the apartment at rest. 6 weeks of covered furniture, curtains drawn against the sun no one is home to enjoy, Silver sleeping in flannel, and the staff, you, Katie, Mrs. Halloran, Mr. Pruitt, living like caretakers of a pharaoh's tomb, on board wages, in a stopped clock 20 floors up. It is the strangest luxury you've ever tasted, this borrowed stillness. You mend all winter. You sit in the afternoon. In the servants' hall with the wireless on low, turning collars, while Mrs. Halloran teaches you her receipts one by one, dictating like a queen settling her estate, because a cook's receipts are her property and her pension, and she gives them only where she means it. Watch now, love, running a burn-scarred forearm over a copper bowl of egg whites. Money's loud, but it's ignorant. It can buy the dinner. It can't taste it. Half of them up there wouldn't know this from a boarding house blancmange, and you'll remember that whenever they make you feel small. She taps the whisk once on the copper rim, a full stop. Learn what they have. Don't learn to want it. Mr. Pruitt spends the empty weeks on inventory, plate, linen, cellar, and one grey February afternoon you carry the lamp for him behind the walnut wall, down the cold stone throat of the cellar itself, and hold it while he counts. Bin by bin, bottle by bottle, chalk numbers on slate tags, his breath showing, the marbled ledger open on a barrel head. 940 bottles now. 8 years of first glasses have drunk the rest. At the champagne bins he pauses and does something you've never seen. He takes down one bottle, wipes the shoulder with his glove, and shows you the label by lamplight as if introducing you to a bishop. The year on it is 1911. Laid down the week the old house was sold out from under us, he says. And that's wrong. The dates are wrong. 1911 was bought long before the sale, and then you understand he isn't reading the label at all. He's reading the cellar, the whole buried body of it. The last organ of the old house still alive in this apartment in the sky. He puts the bottle back the way you'd put back a sleeping child. Wine and dinners, Nora. That's what's left of a great family when the stone goes. Mind you never drop either. In March they come back brown and restless. 14 trunks and a crate of grapefruit, and the pearls return to the walls safe, and the machine spins back up to speed inside a week. And the terrace voices, when the Fridays resume, have changed key. Radio has doubled and is doubling again. The figures on the cigar end of the terrace are twice the figures of the autumn. Farrell meets the southbound gossip at the garage like a man at a stock ticker, which, increasingly, is what the garage is. The notebook comes out of the breast pocket now, openly at the curb. He has bought on margin. He explains it to you and Katie in the service hall with the shining patience of the converted. How $10 holds $100 of stock, how the broker lends the rest, how the stock itself is the security, so the money is somehow, magically its own permission. And Katie asks the only question either of you can think of, which is what happens if it goes down instead of up. And Farrell looks at her with real pity. Down, he says, is over. Down was a thing that happened to your fathers. You're 20 now. Your birthday went by in the empty season, marked by Mrs. Halloran with a cake the size of a saucer, and by your mother with a letter you've read 11 times. Your wages raised to $70 in April, Mr. Pruitt announcing it with the face of a man conceding nothing. The passbook says 402. The winter's board wages made thin deposits, and $5 of every month goes home to Pottsville in a registered envelope. But the line still climbs. Spring comes up the avenue in a haze of forced tulips over the buried trains. Everyone's in the market. The elevator hums all night, and you, Duchess, are 1 year deep in the sky, and starting, it would be a lie to say otherwise, to know your way around it in the dark. In June the migration turns and flows the other way, and this time it takes you with it, because summer is Southampton, and Southampton is a full household. Understand the calendar, because the calendar is the cage. The rich of this street live inside a year as fixed as the liturgical one. New York from October to Christmas, Palm Beach to Easter, New York for the spring, and then, the moment the city turns warm and the streets begin to smell like the city they actually are. Southampton, the far end of Long Island, where the same families have built themselves shingled cottages of 20 and 30 rooms behind privet hedges as tall as a bus, facing the cold green Atlantic. Cottage. You will never get used to the vocabulary. Your family's entire house in Pottsville would fit inside the Crofts Cottage's laundry wing, and you know this precisely, because the laundry wing is where you spend a portion of every summer day. The move is the trunks again, plus the plate, plus half the linen, plus Mrs. Halloran's batterie de cuisine packed in straw like artillery shells, all of it down the service elevator, Louis working the gate, counting pieces aloud, into a hired van, and out along 100 miles of Long Island roads. The family goes by rail from Pennsylvania Station in under 3 hours. You go with the van. And here is the strange thing. The thing you didn't expect. The summer is the closest you will ever come to liking them, because Southampton loosens everyone half a turn. The apartment's 20 floors of altitude are traded for a different insulation. Lawn, hedge, distance, salt haze, and inside it the machine runs slower. Mr. Croft appears at breakfast in linen, actually at a table, actually downstairs, and reads his papers on the veranda with the Atlantic hammering away past the dunes like distant industry. The ticker still reaches him. The telephone to the New York office is sacred. Mornings. But by noon he's at the beach club losing at backgammon, and there are whole hours when the household contains no wanting at all, and you hang sheets in ocean wind that snaps them like sails, and the work is the same work, but the air forgives you for it. Mrs. Croft gardens. That is, she walks the borders with the gardener, choosing. But she knows the names of things, Latin and common, and out among her delphiniums, hatless, unwatched, unjewelled. She is for minutes at a time somebody you've never met and rather like. The pearls spend the summer mostly in the safe. Even the parties are barefoot at the edges. Clambakes on the dunes, corn and lobsters buried on coals, gin slings on painted porches, the Victrola carried out onto the grass. There is champagne, of course. Benny's cases ride out from the city in the van with the linen invoiced as mineral water. But there are also nights, real nights, when the guests are gone by 11 and the house sighs, and you stand at the service door in the dark listening to the ocean turn over, and the arithmetic for once goes quiet. It's on one of those nights, the last of August, that Katie tells you. Both of you sitting on the laundry steps with your shoes off in the warm dark, Louis has asked. She's said yes. Nobody's to know until he's got the second job settled and 200 saved. A superintendent's flat comes with his brother's building in Woodside, maybe, in a year. And she says all of it in a rush, fierce and low, gripping your wrist, and then sits back and looks at the black Atlantic and says the sentence she has clearly been carrying all summer. I'm not doing 30 years of this, Nora. I'll do 3 more. Then it's my own floor under my own feet, and God help the first person who rings a bell at me. You hold that against everything the terrace voices say about what money is for. It's the best definition you'll hear all decade. September brings the household back to the avenue, brown and salted, and the autumn of 1928 comes in like a brass band. And now the market is not a subject at the parties. It is the party. You can chart it from the pantry as exactly as any broker. The terrace figures at the cigar end doubling, the new guests, men no one's grandmother knew, sudden men, radio men and motor men and holding company men, appearing at Mrs. Croft's table because they are carrying everyone's money up the mountain, and it would be eccentric not to feed them. The talk has stopped being about companies at all. Nobody says wireless sets or motor cars anymore. They say radio and General Motors the way you'd say 2 horses, and what they discuss is the going up, the pure vertical fact of it. Radio started the year in the 80s. By autumn it has run past 400, and one of the sudden men at the November table says, through the pantry door in the tone of a man remarking on healthy weather, that a fellow who'd put 10,000 into radio at New Year's was holding 50 odd now, and the table makes the low collective sound of people warming their hands, 10,000 into 50, and you, at the sink, 70 a month, 9 to the passbook, 5 home to Pottsville. You've stopped calling it the arithmetic. It's a window now, that's all. A big lit window between their weather and yours, and you clean it every day, and everyone but you has stopped seeing the glass. And it isn't only the penthouse. This is the year the market goes down the elevator shaft. Farrell is deep in now. The notebook has graduated to 2 notebooks, positions in one and borrowings in the other, which even you can see is the wrong number of notebooks. He's carrying, on margin, stocks worth more than 3 years of his wages, and so is the caterer's head waiter, and so is the fish man on Lexington who has radio and quotes it to you with the scallops, and so she confesses it to you like a sin giggling in the linen room. Is Katie $50 of the Woodside money? In an oil stock, a customer's man swore to her brother was going through the roof. The chauffeur is in, the maid is in, the fish man is in. The papers run stories about shoeshine boys passing tips. Some of those stories are fairy tales. I'll flag it plainly. The legend has outrun the ledger. But the truth under the legend is documented, and it is this. By the end of 1928, ordinary wage-earning New York had walked into a casino it believed was a savings bank, on money it did not have. Louis alone stands in his car like a rock in the rapids, running the gate, saying his one word when the garage gets loud, paper, and taking a certain amount of abuse for it. Farrell has begun calling him Grandpa. Louis takes it with the elevator man's 10-hour patience, and once, only once, answers it. The two of them at the service entrance in the December cold, and you in the doorway with the post. I move everything this building owns, up and down, all day. 40 years I'll do it. You know what I never saw once, Danny? I never saw the shaft care which way the car was going. He swings the gate. The shaft don't care. Remember I said it. At Christmas, the Crofts give the staff their envelopes. A month's wage this year, the market's own generosity trickling 20 floors down, and Mr. Croft handing them out at the pantry door in black tie on his way to dine somewhere brighter, is expansive for the first time in your service. Bull markets improve even the silences of bankers. He tells Mr. Pruitt, actually smiling, that 1929 is going to be, and you are in the doorway with the coats, so you hear the exact words, and I want you to keep them, because in 10 months you will take them out again and turn them over. That 1929 is going to be the best year this country has ever seen. The passbook, fed thin all summer since Southampton has no Thursday line at the Bowery Savings, says $601, Christmas envelope not yet counted. Katie's oil stock is up 4 points. The snow comes down past 20 stories of lit windows softly, all the way to the buried trains. The year 1929 opens the way a heavy door opens on oiled hinges, smoothly, and you only notice the weight later. January takes the family south again. 14 trunks, the locked jewel case, Farrell and the second car, and gives you back the stopped clock, the covered furniture, the mending afternoons. But this Palm Beach season is different in one respect you only understand from the letters and the bills across your pantry table for sorting. Mr. Croft is working. Wires from the New York office follow him down the coast daily. Twice he comes north for 3 days in the middle of the season, alone, a thing that has never happened. Because Mr. Croft, like half the serious men of this street, has spent the winter building something the age has fallen in love with even harder than it loves radio, an investment trust. I'll explain it the way Katie's customer's man brother explains it to the linen room, because his explanation is the whole era in one sentence. It's a company, see, that doesn't make anything. It just owns pieces of other companies, and you buy a piece of it, so you own a piece of the owning. A company made of stock buying stock with borrowed money, and the public queuing to buy stock in it. Hundreds of these things are being floated in 1929, respectable houses sponsoring them, and the trust Mr. Croft's firm launches in the spring is oversubscribed the first morning. The grey-templed men on the terrace have stopped talking about the mountain going up. They are manufacturing new mountain. In March, back from the south, the household spins up again. And one Sunday, your Sunday, Louis takes you to the roof, the real roof. Above the penthouse there is one more landing on the service stair past the tank room, and Louis has the key, because the elevator machinery lives up there and the machinery is his parish. He stands you at the parapet rail in the wind, between the water tank on its steel legs and the humming motor house at the true summit of the building, higher than the family has ever stood. This you realise with a jolt. The terrace is below you. You and Louis and the pigeons hold the actual crown. And he sweeps one dock worker hand across the whole smoking compass of the city and grants you the view like a man serving dinner. And the city lies there, and for a minute you genuinely cannot speak. South, the Midtown Towers stand in their morning haze, and among them you can see the new one growing. The Chrysler Building on 42nd and Lexington, a silver-nosed thing climbing week by week in a race with another tower going up on Wall Street. each of them lying about their final height like card players. Because in 1929 even the buildings are in the market, even the skyline is leveraged. Beyond it, the harbour glitters. North, the Park Avenue Canyon runs to 96th Street and stops dead. The lid ends there, the tracks come out of the ground, and the avenue that was too grand to sell anything turns in one block into tenements and coal smoke. The two halves of the street pose there in plain sight like a before and after card that nobody rides far enough uptown to read. East, the river, the barges, Queens flat to the horizon with Katie's whole future somewhere in it. And below, directly below, 21 stories, straight down past the terrace where the burlap is coming off the hedges, the avenue's toy motor cars, the doormen small as rice, the whole apparatus you serve reduced to a diagram of itself. Fella asked me once, was I ever afraid? Working the shaft, Louis says, hands folded on the rail, entirely at peace. I told him, the building don't fall, mister. The building's honest, steel and stone, paid in full. It's everything inside it that's floating. He nods at the silver tower rising downtown. They're racing now to see who gets closest to heaven on borrowed money. Somebody's gonna win too. He turns his collar up. You're a cog, Duchess, same as me. But look at the size of the machine you're a cog in. There's whole countries got less view than your Thursday afternoon. Barely a cog, but you're here. You're in it, all the way up here, a coal miner's daughter with the second best view in New York, and you stand in the wind until your ears ache, filling yourself with it like a passbook. In June, the Crofts sail for France on the Ile-de-France. The new French liner, 2 years old, the one the papers call a floating piece of the Rue de la Paix. First-class cabins like apartments and, the crowning joke of the age, a bar the length of a handball court, because a French ship in international waters is the one place a New Yorker can drink without conspiracy. 6 weeks. Paris for the dressmakers, a rented house at Deauville. The pearls go to sea. You stay, on board wages, with the hedges and the dust sheets, and with Mr. Pruitt, who observes acidly that in the old house the family crossed every year on the old Cunarders, and that the difference between then and now is that then they went to Europe to be quiet, and now they go to be seen being quiet. That summer in the half-dark apartment, with the family's absence lying over the furniture like the sheets, is the last long stillness, so let it be still. Katie's oil stock has gone sideways and slightly down, which everyone assures her is the market catching its breath. Farrell, minding the town car through a New York July, is up, on paper, both notebooks agree, $9,100, which is to say the man who drives the Crofts' second car is worth, on paper, 6 years of his own wages and has begun pricing taxi medallions and a garage of his own in the same breath, and paying for rounds at the corner speakeasy with a largeness that makes Louis look at his shoes. The papers that summer read like scripture for a new religion. Brokers' loans at record heights, and the records reported like sporting news. In August, the market makes new tops, and the sudden men's names are in the columns, and one of Mr. Croft's wires from Deauville, you sort it to his study desk yourself, asks the office to extend the trust's position again. They come home in September and the weather turns, and I will give you the autumn of 1929 in the order the pantry received it. On the 5th of September, a statistician named Roger Babson, a man the market men considered a crank, and said so, in print, with enjoyment, stands up at a business conference in Massachusetts and says what he has said before, but this time into a nervous room. Sooner or later a crash is coming, and it may be terrific. That afternoon the market breaks sharply. They even give the dip his name, the Babson break, the way you'd name a squall after the fool who predicted it. It recovers. Of course it recovers. The terrace voices at the September parties retell the story as comedy. Factories will close, the man said. Men will be thrown out of work. The vicious circle will get in full swing. Laughter, indulgent, replete. The good claret goes round. But you notice, from the pantry, drying glasses, where all the truth in this apartment has always lived, that the laughter has a new note in it, a hair too quick, like the latch with its quarter-second catch. And you notice that Mr. Croft, at the head of his own table, tells the story himself and laughs himself, and that his coffee afterward goes back cold. Through October the market soars, down, up hard, down again, and the pantry telephone starts ringing at hours that have no precedent, and Mr. Croft's tray starts going up at 7 instead of 8. The financial page creased now, actually creased, where his thumb holds it. On the 23rd of October in the afternoon, the men racing at 42nd and Lexington spring their secret. From inside the Chrysler Building's crown, in an hour and a half, they hoist a hidden steel spire, jacking it up through the top of the dome like a needle through silk, and the tower stands complete at over 1,000 feet, the tallest thing human beings have ever built, gleaming over the city in the October light. That is Wednesday. The spire goes up on Wednesday. Now come down off the roof, Duchess. Put your apron on. It's Thursday, the 24th of October, 1929, and the telephone is ringing. It is ringing at 7 in the morning, which has never happened. It rings while the trays are loading, and while they go up, and when you come back down it is ringing again, and Mr. Pruitt, who answers the pantry extension with the same 4 words he has used for 34 years, has stopped saying all 4 of them. Mr. Croft takes his coffee standing in his overcoat in the front hall, standing in the front hall like a servant, and is gone downtown by 7:30 with Farrell driving, and the apartment he leaves behind him is like a barometer with the glass falling out of it. You will read, later, everything that happened downtown that day, and I'll give you the shape of it now, from the records, because from the pantry you got it only in fragments, the way you get lightning through a drawn curtain. The market opened steady. Then, in the space of an hour, it began to come apart, not falling so much as failing to find a floor, prices dropping into holes where no buyers stood, and the sheer volume of selling swamped the machinery itself, the stock ticker, which prints the prices for every office and hotel lobby and brokerage room in America, fell behind, first minutes, then hours, so that by late morning nobody in the country knew what anything was worth. They only knew the last price was lower than the one before, and that the tape was lying about how much lower by now. Nearly 13 million shares changed hands before the close. The ticker hammered on into the evening, printing the afternoon's disaster long after dark, like a telegraph delivering a casualty list. Crowds stood in Broad Street outside the exchange, quiet mostly. The papers themselves remarked on the quiet, just standing, looking up at the building as though it were on fire in some way that didn't show. At noon, the great bankers of the city met at the house of Morgan across the street and put together a pool, and the exchange's vice president, a man named Richard Whitney, walked onto the floor and bid 205, well above the market, for 10,000 shares of United States Steel. The old signal, the captain stepping to the rail, and the floor cheered, and the bleeding slowed, and by the close the papers were calling it a rally, organised support, the worst behind us. In the pantry this arrives as follows: the telephone all day at intervals of minutes, Mrs. Croft cancelling her afternoon and then not leaving her room, Mrs. Halloran cooking a dinner nobody has ordered because her hands refuse to be idle, Katie coming up from the basement switchboard girls who hear everything in this building with the same sentence over and over: it's bad downtown, and the fishman on Lexington, when you're sent for the salmon, standing in his sawdust with the afternoon extra spread on the counter, not selling anything, reading the figures with his lips moving, radio, his stock, your street stock, the decade's darling, is down by more than 1/3 from its top and still going. And he looks up at you, this round pink man who has quoted the market to you with the scallops for 2 years, and what is in his face is not ruin yet. It is worse, in a way. It is arithmetic, arriving. Mr. Croft comes home at 1 in the morning. You are up. Everyone is up. The household has abandoned its clock without anyone ordering it, and you see him come through the front hall under the one-lit lamp, and I will tell you exactly what you see, because it is the climax of this story and it is not loud. His overcoat is buttoned wrong. 1 button. A man dressed by valets his whole life, offset by a single buttonhole, and that crooked line down his front is the whole day downtown, the whole year, the whole street, and he stands in his own hall as if he has forgotten which of these doors is his, and Mr. Pruitt takes his hat, and Mr. Croft says, "Thank you, Pruitt," in a voice you've never heard him use, the voice of a man being careful with ordinary words, and goes up his own stairs slowly, one hand touching the rail the whole way. Friday is quiet, Saturday is quiet, the strange bright weekend, the papers full of reassurance, the banks stand firm, the worst is over, sound stocks at bargain prices, and Sunday the churches are noticeably fuller, and Monday the market opens and goes straight down through everything the bankers propped on Thursday, 9 million shares, no rally at the close, no pool, no Whitney, nothing under it at all. And then comes Tuesday. Tuesday, the 29th of October, 1929. Black Tuesday. More than 16 million shares, a number so far past any day in the exchange's history that the clerks will be untangling the paperwork for a week, the tape hours behind again, blocks of stock thrown out at any price, at no price, the great trusts of the summer, the companies made of stock, the manufactured mountain, collapsing into themselves like wet paper, and by the closing gong the market of 1929 has burned off, in a handful of trading days, paper wealth on the scale of everything the United States spent fighting the World War. I could give you the numbers all night. Here is the only one you need. On the 1st of September, the fishman, the caterer's head waiter, Farrell, Katie's $50, and Mr. Croft's trust were all on paper rich. By the evening of the 29th of October the paper was gone, not hidden, not resting, gone, revealed to have been, all along, exactly what Louis said it was. That evening the apartment is silent in a way stone is silent. Dinner is sent up and comes down uneaten except the soup. Mrs. Croft sits in the small drawing-room with the radio on at a murmur, and does not ring for anything, which frightens you more than weeping would. And at 11 o'clock, crossing the dark gallery with the last tray, you see that the terrace door is standing open to the October cold, and Mr. Croft is outside at the parapet, in his dinner jacket, no coat, looking down at the avenue, and your heart stops. Let me be honest with you about why, and about what is true. You have heard the stories already. The whole country is telling them by Tuesday night. They will be telling them for 100 years. Ruined men raining from the windows of Wall Street. Brokers stepping off ledges in ranks. You will hear that clerks in hotels asked guests whether they wanted the room for sleeping or jumping. That one came out even that week, appears in the jokes almost immediately. So here is the record, and this channel keeps its books clean. It did not happen that way. The window jumping wave is very nearly all myth. The city's suicide count that autumn was no higher than in the quiet months before the crash. The handful of deaths that did occur got printed and reprinted until they multiplied in memory like faces in facing mirrors. Even on Black Thursday itself, a workman who stepped out onto a high scaffold in Wall Street drew a crowd below him, certain they were watching a ruined speculator. He was checking the rivets. That crowd is the truth of it, not the falling, but the readiness to see falling. The crash killed fortunes, marriages, firms, and futures. It did not, in any number the records will support, rain men on the pavements. And anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you the era with the myth still attached. But you, on Tuesday night, 21 years old, alone in the dark gallery with a tray of cold consommé, you don't have the records. You have a man at a parapet 20 floors up on the worst day in the history of money. You do the only thing a servant can do. You make a noise. You set the tray down on the refectory table hard enough to ring the silver, and you go to the open door as if going about your work, and you say, "Will you take coffee, sir?" The most ordinary sentence in the household's entire liturgy. And Mr. Croft turns from the parapet, and his face in the terrace dark is grey and old and perfectly calm, and he looks at you for a moment as if translating the words from a language he used to speak. "It got cold," he says at last, as though this explained the door, the parapet, the hour, the day. And then, stepping past you into the gallery with the terrace latch catching under his hand, that latch, the sticking latch, the quarter-second, he stops and looks at the door as if seeing it for the first time in 5 years, and says, to the latch, in a voice with a crack of dry wonder in it, "My grandmother's house had 40 rooms." A pause. "We are very high up here, aren't we?" Not a question. He goes across the gallery and up the stairs, one hand on the rail, and you close the terrace door and work the bolt, and stand there with your forehead nearly touching the cold glass, breathing, while below you the avenue lies in its lamplight, and under the avenue the trains go on running in the dark like a pulse. Wednesday morning. The show business paper Variety puts the whole week in 7 words on its front page. Wall Street lays an egg, because somebody had to say it in American, and it wasn't going to be anyone on this street. And in the garage on 66th Street Thursday, you find Farrell sitting on a crate beside the Rolls with the oil drum lid off, feeding his 2 notebooks to a small fire, page by page, with the concentration of a man doing precision work. 9,100 paper dollars, and the margin calls came Monday and Tuesday, and cleaned out his cash, his real cash, 4 years of wages, to bury the paper. He's not crying, and you will respect him your whole life for the way he does this. Neatly, all the way through, both notebooks, and then puts the lid back, and wipes his hands on the rag like after any job, and looks up at you with his face rearranged into something older, and says, "Well, Duchess, now we know what the shaft thinks." He stands and squares the whipcord jacket that the family, not he, will decide how much longer he wears. Louis gets to be right. Tell him gentle. He won't enjoy it. That's the hell of Louis. He's wrong about that, as it happens. When Katie tells him, Louis is quiet for a long moment, and then says only, $50 of it was ours, and puts his arm around her. And that is the whole speech. The oil stock is at $1.08. The woodside floor of her own has moved 2 years further away in 1 week, and she leans on a rock in the rapids, and the rock holds, and you stand in the basement corridor watching the two of them, and understanding that you have just seen the only fortune on this whole street that came through the crash intact. November comes in grey and quiet, and now I want to slow everything down, because this is the part of the story nobody films, not the crash, but the hush after it. The long, careful, dignified hush of a street learning to be less rich, floor by floor in private. Understand first what did not happen. The Crofts are not ruined. Ruin, the overnight kind, happened mostly to the leveraged, to the sudden men, 2 of whom have vanished from the dinner lists as completely as if the sea had taken them, to the trusts, including Mr. Croft's, whose shares are worth 1/5 of their summer price. To Farrell's tribe, the margin men, the fish man, who has stopped quoting anything and sells fish. Old money with real things under it, buildings, bonds, the firm itself, bends and holds. What happens on Park Avenue in November 1929 is not ruin. It is contraction. A great slow indrawn breath, made of 1,000 small economies that only the servants can see, because the servants are most of what gets economized. You see it first in the flowers. The florist's boy comes Fridays only now, then not at all. Mrs. Croft does the bowls herself from the terraces' last chrysanthemums, and is oddly better at it than the florist was, and you hold the shears for her in the cold, and neither of you says what you're both doing, which is filling a vase with the visible shape of a smaller life. Then the caterers' waitresses stop being hired, because the parties stop. November's dinner book entries, when you dust Mr. Pruitt's pantry shelf, are 4 covers, 6 covers, family. Then the second car is put up on blocks in the garage, under a tarpaulin like a coffin for an idea, and Farrell is kept. 1 car, half wages, and glad of it. Gladness being the new currency below stairs everywhere on the avenue, because the agencies are already full of chauffeurs and cooks and useful maids from households that cut deeper than this one. The building feels it too. 2 apartments on the lower floors go quietly empty before Christmas, their staffs paid off with a month and a reference, and Louis runs his car up and down past the dark landings and says the shaft is honest, and doesn't smile when he says it now. And then, in the 3rd week of November, it is Katie. Mrs. Croft does it herself, which is to her credit. In the small drawing room in the morning, the household will manage with 1 maid now, a month's wages, a written character of the kind that opens doors, if there were doors. Katie comes down the back stairs with the envelope in her apron pocket, and her face composed to exactly the blankness the profession requires, and holds the blankness through the kitchen, and holds it in the servants' hall, and loses it only in your room, sitting on your bed, with Mrs. Halloran standing guard at the door with a dish towel over her shoulder, like a sergeant's sash. The whole 3-year plan gone through her fingers twice in 1 month, the oil stock now the place, and what she cries about in the end, furiously hiccuping, is neither. It's that she is 24, and the best reference of her life just came out of the worst month of her century. Then she washes her face at your basin and pins her cap, because it is Tuesday and the brasses want doing, and she does them, every one better than usual, out of spite at the universe. And if you want to know what kept this country upright through the next 10 years, it was not the banker's pool, I'll tell you that. It was that. People doing the brasses anyway. Louis rides down with her boxes himself on the last Saturday, At the service door he puts her fare in her glove like contraband and says, loud enough for the timekeeper to hear, Miss Rafferty's expected in Woodside, which is his way of announcing to the building and the world that the wedding is not postponed, floor of her own or no floor. They all marry in February, quietly, and live with his brother, and she will do day work while he keeps the shaft. And the last you see of her that Saturday is her red-knuckled hand out the taxi window, waving without turning around, because turning around was never Katie's way. The same week the cellar begins to go. You are carrying the lamp again, a grey Thursday morning, and Mr. Pruitt is at the racks with the marbled ledger, counting out. Benny stands in the bookroom in his too-good suit with his hand truck, mild and total, pricing nothing now because everything has a price at last, and the empty cartons say Melrose Beverage Company. The same as ever, only this time they ride up the shaft empty and go down full, because that is what a cellar laid down in 1919 turns out to have been all along. Not a pleasure, a reserve. The most liquid asset in the apartment, in every sense, and the only one whose price went up in October. Mr. Croft sells it the way everything is done this November, quietly, in lots, to Benny, who has buyers. There are always buyers. The crash has not made this city thirsty for one drink less. It has only rearranged who pours. And Mr. Pruitt hands the bottles out of the racks 2 at a time, wiping each shoulder with his glove, entering each in the ledger in his small upright hand, decommissioning the last organ of the old house bottle by bottle. At the champagne bins he pauses, exactly where he paused for you in the lamplight of 1928, and takes down the 1911 and holds it a moment. Then he wraps it in straw with the rest. The house does not hurry, he says, to the racks, to the ledger, to nobody. The house rearranges. Benny, counting out bills on the barrel-head, cash, real cash, the realest object in Manhattan this month, has the grace not to look at him while he says it. 300-odd bottles go down the shaft in November. What Benny pays is not your business, but you carry the strong box weight of it in the ledger's new column, and you understand the arithmetic has turned around entirely. 2 years ago this house paid $98 a case to fill glasses it didn't need. Now the 1919 capital flows the other way, back down the elevator, out through the service door, to keep the visible surface. The doorman, the one car, the 4-covered dinners with the good claret, unbroken. Appearances matter on this street. They matter more than almost anything, and this street will spend its last real dollar making the surface hold. And the pearls. I promised you the pearls, and this is where they go. The first week of December, Mrs. Croft calls you to the dressing room at an off hour, mid-afternoon, the light already failing. The mirror is swung out, the safe is open, the chamois case is on the glass of the dressing table. She is perfectly composed and rather kind, which is how you know. You'll take these to Mr. Estabrook, the jeweller, 5th Avenue, the man who matched the rope pearl by pearl over 11 years. Personally by the side entrance. Ask for him and no one else. He is expecting the case. A breath. Some settings are to be seen to. Some settings are to be seen to. In December, in this year, with the surface holding the way surfaces hold. What Mr. Estabrook's back office does with great ropes this winter. Buys them outright, quietly, or sells them south and west for owners who require it never spoken of, or breaks them, matched pearl by matched pearl, 11 years of matching into smaller deniable things, is a trade the papers will not learn about for years, because his side entrance exists precisely so that they won't. So you carry $60,000 down 5th Avenue in a work basket, under a folded apron, past the wreath-hung windows and the Salvation Army bells and the men. You notice them now, this winter. You will never stop noticing them again. The men at the corners with their collars up who are not going anywhere. And you deliver the case into the small dry hands of Mr. Estabrook himself, who signs nothing and says only, "Tell Mrs. Croft everything will be attended to with the greatest care." And 3 seconds a night, the clasp and the warm nape and the pilot's touch at the collarbone. That liturgy is over, though neither you nor she will ever say so. What comes back from Estabrook's before Christmas in the same case is a rope. It is beautiful. You fasten it exactly as before, and you would put your passbook on it that the pearls your fingers know, the 87, the 11 years, are not all of them in the room. That is how the rich were ruined, where they were ruined, the ones the records let us see, not out the window, through the side entrance, with the greatest care. Your own turn comes in January, and because this story has been honest with you all night, I'll be honest now. It does not come as a blow. It comes as a door. You have seen it approaching since Katie went. A 20-room duplex does not carry a lady's maid and a parlourmaid's work in one girl forever, when the dinner book says family 6 covers, and you have done what a coal town girl does with an approaching winter. You have counted your coal. The passbook, the grey book at the bottom of the sewing box under the spool, says $890. 2 years and 8 months, week by $9 week through the whole gaudy roar of the boom, while the Fishman rode radio and Farrell rode margin, and the Bowery Savings Bank that Basilica for laundresses has come through the autumn like the pyramids, and your $890 are real. And you are. You realise one grey Thursday and the marble line between a motorman and a cook. The only person you served with or served under in the entire year of 1929 who ended it richer than she began. Mrs. Croft does it in the small drawing-room, in the morning, the same chair, the same kindness, and then, being Mrs. Croft, does something more. The character she hands you is not the usual formula. She is written. You will read it 11 times on the subway, like your mother's letters, that you are exact, discreet, quick with a needle beyond your years, and the phrase you will keep that you are to be trusted in a room with anything. And then she says, not quite looking at you, in the voice she uses for the mirror, "You sew better than you buttle, Nora. I've watched you take in a Paris dress by eye and improve on the line of it. Madame Berthe fits me at Bergdorf's. The workroom takes girls on her word, and she owes me several. A breath, and the last thing, with one dry corner of a smile, the couture will shrink this year. Alterations will not. Everyone I know is being altered. And that is how, on the 3rd Monday of January 1930, you present yourself with your sewing box at the employees' entrance of Bergdorf Goodman, the great white store on 5th Avenue at 58th Street, 2 years in its new building, on the very ground where a Vanderbilt mansion of 130 rooms stood, until the wreckers took it, because the mansions fell to the stores as surely as they fell to the apartment houses. You cannot leave this story's plot even by changing jobs. $22 a week in the alterations workroom, 6 girls at a long table under north light, board yourself, room yourself, evenings your own, Sundays your own, and your name. This stops you, the first payday, looking at the envelope. Your name written by a stranger who has never once called you Mary. Board yourself, room yourself. I'll keep the books honest. It is not riches. A furnished room on Lexington in the 60s, dinner cooked on a gas ring, winter coming through the window frame. 22 a week minus room and board and car fare leaves you some weeks hardly ahead of the 70 a month with a penthouse roof over it. But it is yours. The hours are yours, the floor is yours, the latch on the door, a cheap latch, a tinny little thing that works perfectly, is yours, and no bell in the world can ring at you. Katie's whole fierce catechism on the laundry steps, and it took the end of the gilded world to hand it to you 2 years early. The goodbyes, then, because you were raised to make them properly. Mrs. Halloran, who is kept. Cooks of her rank die in harness. The 4-cover dinners still want genius, maybe more than the 60-cover ones did. Feeds you a last tea in the kitchen with the gas range hissing, and gives you, wrapped in a clean dish towel, her own copybook of receipts, the property, the pension, the thing she gives only where she means it. You start to refuse it, and she looks at you exactly as she looked at the range your first morning. I've no daughter, and Katie can't cook. God love her. Then, pressing the parcel into your basket with one scarred forearm, the last lesson, the one you'll keep longest. You saw how it all went, love, so you'll remember. It wasn't the crash that told you who anybody was. It was the Tuesday after. Any fool can dance in the money. Watch how they do their brasses in the ruin of it. That's the whole of knowing people, and you got it for free by 21. Cheap at the price. Farrell you find at the garage. Whipcord traded for a taxi driver's cap, because the second car never came off its blocks, and the family let him go with a season's wages at Christmas, and he has put them, every dollar, not into the medallion outright, but into the down payment on one, borrowed sensibly against his own labour. Papers he shows you with a flourish through the cab window, like a man who has learned exactly one enormous lesson, and means to dine out on it forever. Margin, he says, slapping the wheel, but on me. I'm the stock now. Let 'em try and call it. He insists on driving you and your suitcase and the sewing box to Lexington free, and talks the whole way, and is himself only ballasted. And when you pay him nothing as agreed, he takes an imaginary coin from you anyway and bites it and winks, and the last you see of Dan Farrell is the cab swinging south into the traffic of a city that will, whatever else stops, always need to be driven somewhere. Louis rides you down for the last time on a Tuesday morning. Neither of you says anything, floor after floor, because what is there? You have been 800 mornings in this car. The felt pads, the smell of other people's dinners, the floors ticking past like years. At the bottom, he holds the gate an extra moment, so the goodbye has a doorway to stand in. Well, Duchess. He looks at you the way he looked at the skyline from the roof, taking a full accounting. 20 floors up, and you came down the only one of the lot of them with more than you went up with. The gate rattles back. Katie's in February. You'll stand up with her. She won't ask because she thinks you're grand now. You'll tell her different. And you do stand up with her in February in a borrowed church in Woodside in your good coat and cry harder than the bride. Mr. Pruitt you say goodbye to last in his pantry, and he does the thing you will tell your grandchildren about. He takes the dinner book off its shelf, the green baize, the paving stone weight of it, 1894 to now, and opens it on the table and turns it to face you. There is the last entry, 6 covers, the good claret, his small upright hand, and below it he has ruled in ink a line, a plain double line across the page, the kind an accountant rules under a completed sum. 36 years of dinners, he says in his inventory voice, and I find the total has been reached. He lets you look at it a moment. Then he closes the book, wraps the baize, and shakes your hand. the first time in 2.5 years he has touched you, and his hand is dry and light as paper, and he says, "You were never once late, Nora. After the first morning, it has been noted. From Mr. Pruitt, that is the Victoria Cross. He stays, of course. He will keep the surface of that apartment holding as long as there is a surface to hold, because a house, he told you once, wine and dinners aside, is the people who keep it, and he is what's left of the house. The last thing you do in the penthouse, before dawn on your final morning, is not asked of you, and no one ever knows. You take the tin of polish and the rag, and you go out through the gallery to the terrace door in the cold black 6 o'clock air, 20 floors above the sleeping avenue, and you polish the brass latch, the sticking latch, the quarter-second catch, first thing your hands ever did in the sky, and now the last, until it shines for whoever comes after you. It sticks exactly as it stuck for 2.5 years, through the roar and the raid scare and the worst Tuesday in the history of money. Some things hold. That was never the latch's job to open smooth. Its job was to hold, and it held, and standing there with the polish stinging your nose and the East River going pewter to gold at the edge of the world, you tell it out loud, like a fool, like a girl from Pottsville at the top of New York. Good luck then, and you cap the tin, and you go down the back stairs and out the service door and into the rest of your life. And now it's a March evening in 1930, and you're sitting on the sill of your own window on Lexington Avenue with a cup of tea going cold on the gas ring behind you, and your feet for the first time in 3 years do not ache, because sitting down at sewing table for a living turns out to be the single greatest luxury the island of Manhattan has ever offered you, greater than anything behind the walnut wall. And through the window, over the low roofs, you can see them, the towers, uptown and down, the lit crowns of the avenue you used to live above. From here they look like what they always were, lanterns. Enormous, beautiful, borrowed lanterns, with the trains running underneath and the elevator shafts running up the middle, and at the very top, in the old attics of the sky, a few hundred people trying to believe the altitude belongs to them. Let me tell you, softly now, what the years did. The documented years, the real ones, because we keep the books clean even at bedtime. Prohibition, the lid that made the cellar and the cocktail hour and Benny's entire mild profession, came off at last in December of 1933, repealed outright, the only constitutional amendment in American history ever to be simply taken back. And the first legal glasses in 14 years were poured into a country too poor by then to make much of a party of it. The Cotton Club left Harlem a few years after. The bands it never let sit in its own audience went on to fill concert halls on 5 continents, and the music you heard from the back wall with Miss Ruth outlived every velvet rope in New York. The Chrysler Building held its silver title for barely a year. The Empire State went past it in 1931, built in the pit of the slump on the ground where the old Waldorf Astoria stood, because this city tears down palaces to build the next thing even when it is broke, especially when it is broke. The market that died on the 29th of October 1929 did not climb back to its September mountaintop for 25 years, a quarter of a century, an entire working life before the line came home, and the decade it dragged down with it put a third of this city out of work and bread lines under the windows of the avenue itself. And Park Avenue held, the way surfaces hold. The buildings never emptied for long, the trains never stopped underneath, and the penthouses stayed penthouses, to this day all over the earth. The word your era invented still means the same beautiful backwards joke. The servants' floor, the attic, the place for tanks and maids and mop hooks, transformed by nothing but altitude and appetite into the most expensive rooms in the world. The rich still live in the attic. They simply had it painted. As for the household, the Crofts, Pruitt of the dinner book, Halloran of the receipts, Katie and Louis and Farrell and Benny, and the girl with the polished tin, you know better than to ask me for their endings, because you know by now what they were. Composites, borrowed eyes, 100 true lives braided into a dozen so that you could stand inside the rooms the records only describe. The rooms were real. The prices were real. The dates, the laws, the latch-cold mornings, the wages, the envelope, the line ruled under the sum. The people, whoever they each were, and the agency files and the memoirs say they were in every particular that matters, exactly like these. The people history closed over quietly, the way it closes over everyone who did the brasses anyway. No plaque on the avenue names a single one of them. The avenue itself is their plaque. Every lit window is. So put it down now. All of it. You've carried this street all night. Let's set it back where it belongs, piece by piece, the way you'd put a house to bed. The pearls are in the safe, or somewhere kinder. Let them go. The cellar is empty, and the walnut wall is only a wall now, and behind it there is nothing but cool, dark air, and the smell of 1919 fading. Let it fade. The telephone has stopped ringing. It stopped a long, long time ago. Let it be still. The trains are running under the avenue in the dark, on time, unhurried, the way they ran under the tulips and the crash and the whole bright roar alike, and they need nothing at all from you. Let them run. And the girl on the terrace in the cold black 6 o'clock, she capped the tin, remember? She went down the stairs on her own, 2 aching feet, and out into a life with her own latch on the door. And she landed as the ones who counted their coal generally did, right side up, needle in hand, richer than the roaring year. You don't have to hold her up any more. Nobody up there needs you tonight. Nobody down here does either. The trays are done. The glasses are washed. The brasses will keep till morning. You're warm enough. You're fed enough. You're safe enough. And you know now, better than anyone on that whole gilded street ever knew it, that enough was always the only real fortune on the island. Listen to your own house now, wherever it is, however high off the ground it sits. Every home has its service sounds, its below-stairs voice, and they are all saying the same thing they said in 1929, the radiator ticking as it cools. That's the boiler banking its fire for the night, the way the coal range banked in the kitchen wing while the city slept. The refrigerator humming to itself in the dark. That's the iceman's whole profession, folded into a white box and still faithfully on duty. Water moving somewhere in the walls, a floor settling, a car passing, blocks away, on somebody's late errand. The building you're lying in is doing for you right now, without being thanked, everything a staff of 16 once did for a marble pile on Fifth Avenue, keeping you warm, keeping you fed, keeping the dark outside the glass. And it asks exactly what the profession always asked, which is not to be noticed. You may notice it tonight, just this once, the way you'd catch a maid's eye in a mirror and nod, and then let it get on with its work. The same sounds, if you think of it, that Nora heard through the wall of the servants' wing. The same as the night after the first party, when her feet ached and the glasses were done. The same as the empty Palm Beach winters, the stopped clock, the snow coming down past the lit floors. The same as the Tuesday after the worst Tuesday, when the telephone finally slept. The The same small, faithful machinery, running under every night there has ever been, running under this one, and it has carried heavier years than yours down to morning, and it will carry yours, and it does not need you awake for a single turn of it. A century, near enough, has gone by since that girl knelt on the cold flagstones with her polished tin. The city she cleaned is still there. The avenue is still a lid, and the flower beds are still a roof, and the trains still slide beneath the tulips 10 times an hour with nobody looking up from their soup. The buildings she served are lived in tonight, this very night, by people who have no idea that the room where they keep the wine was drawn on the plans as a maid's bedroom, or that the terrace where they take their coffee was measured out for water tanks, or that once, before dawn, a coal miner's daughter stood at their parapet rail and told a brass latch good luck. The attics of the sky are all still occupied. Somewhere up there right now, 20 floors above a sleeping avenue, a light is burning late over somebody's arithmetic. And somewhere below it, down some side street, through some service door, the 6 o'clock people are already asleep because their alarm rings first, because the whole shining thing is still fed from underneath, and always was and always will be. Some things don't change. The heights change hands, the fortunes burn off like paper, the pearls go quietly out the side entrance. But the keeping goes on. The polishing, the counting, the folding, the mending, the passbooks fattening a line at a time in their bottom drawers. The brass is done anyway, in every ruin, on every bright morning. That doesn't change. The keeping doesn't change. Tomorrow there will be work. There is always work. That has never once failed to be true, and it will not fail tonight. Tomorrow there will be bells and errands and lines to stand in, and totals climbing their pages a line at a time. Tomorrow the city will pretend, at the top of its voice, whatever the year requires it to pretend. But that's tomorrow. Right now there is only this. The bed under you, the dark around you, the long day done. So let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took a tired girl in a narrow bed in a servant's wing 20 floors above Park Avenue 100 years ago, with polish on her hands and the whole lit city humming underneath her like a held note. Let the towers dim. Let the traffic thin to a whisper, and the whisper to a breath, and the breath to nothing. Let your thoughts slow and soften and settle and finally stop, the way snow settles past 20 stories of lamplight, softly, all the way down to the buried trains. You did your work. You kept your books honest. You made it home. You've earned this rest 100 times over. Take it. And dream, if you dream at all, of a bright terrace in the morning sun, and a stubborn brass latch giving way at last under somebody's patient hands. Good night.